Okay, so let's look at some examples of when it's appropriate to use square roots to solve equations. And I'll begin with an example that we could solve another way. X squared minus 4 equals 0. So you could solve this by factoring because it's a difference of squares, or you could use square roots, okay, to solve it. So let's look at the factoring method first. For factoring, you need a 0 on the right hand side. So x squared minus 4 is x plus 2 times x minus 2. And now you can say that x plus 2 has to be 0, or x minus 2 has to be 0. So x equals negative 2, or x equals positive 2. Okay, so there are two solutions to this equation. Now how do you do it using square roots? Well, if you use square roots, you would actually add the 4 to both sides, and you get x squared equals 4. Now the key to this is everything with x is being squared on the left, and the only thing over here is a number. So this works out very nicely. So what you do is you take the square root of the left side and you get x, and then you take the square root of 4, but you have to make sure that you realize there are two square roots of 4. Right? You've got a positive square root of 4 and a negative square root of 4. The square root of 4 is 2, so what you end up with is a positive or a negative 2. And all that means is that x could be 2 or negative 2, plus or minus 2. Okay, so the key to when you take the square root of both sides, you have to do a plus or minus so that you get both of the square roots. So you can see that in either case you get the same set of solutions. Okay, so that was a simple example. Now, the nice thing about this is now you can solve equations like x squared minus 5 equals 0. You know, this doesn't factor, so instead, get what's squared by itself, so add the 5, take the square root of both sides, not forgetting the plus or minus, and x is plus or minus the square root of 5, and you leave it like that because you can't simplify the square root of 5. So there are two solutions in this case as well. Another nice thing is if you have something like x minus 2 squared equals 8, for example, notice that everything with x is being squared and the other side is just a number. That's when you want to take the square root of both sides. Taking the square root of the left side gives you x minus 2. Taking the square root of the right side gives you plus or minus the square root of 8. So you've got x minus 2. Now you need to simplify the square root of 8. Well, 8 is 4 times 2, and when you pull the 4 out of the square root, it becomes a 2. So you've got the 4 that comes out and becomes a 2, and you've got a 2 still underneath because 8 is 4 times 2. So the 4 comes out, the 2 underneath stays. So you get this. Now, to solve for x, you simply add the 2 to both sides, and so you end up with the positive 2 here, and then this thing is plus or minus 2 square roots of 2. Now what does this mean? It means there are two solutions to this equation. One of them is 2 plus the square root of 2, so x could be that, or x could be 2 minus, sorry, I forgot this 2. X could be 2 plus 2 square roots of 2, or x could be 2 minus 2 square roots of 2. So you still get two possible solutions. The key here is to keep your plus or minus with this guy no matter where it goes. So when you add the 2 over, you've got the 2 plus or minus 2 square roots of 2. Here's another example. Take the square root of both sides and you get x plus 1 equals plus or minus the square root of negative 4. Well, if you recall, the square root of 4 is 2 and the square root of the negative is I, so this is plus or minus 2i. And now you subtract the 1, so you get negative 1 plus or minus 2i. So you get two solutions here as well. Let's do one more example like this, somewhat similar anyway. If you have something like negative 6 times x plus 2 quantity squared equals 36, well, you could take the square root of both sides, but it's much easier to divide both sides by negative 6 first so that you isolate the square root part, or the squared part. So you get x plus 2 squared equals 36 divided by negative 6 is negative 6. Take the square root of both sides, and then the negative underneath the square root here pulls out and becomes an I, so you get plus or minus I times the square root of 6, and then subtract the 2. And you get this answer. Notice that the I is next to the square root and not in front of the plus or minus, so you have to be careful with that.